So the question is, what's going to happen in relation to the upgrade of Bonavista Drive and Johnson Street?
Yeah, we've just to go finalise the designs through there. Basically, it'll take it'll square the whole intersection up, taking a splay off the corner of the park and doing the widening through there. So at the moment, there's a few little hiccups with services. The low pressure sewer system, there's some adjustments there, so we're dealing with flow systems on that, and that will then construct the remainder of Johnson Street with that missing half road there, and square up the intersection. So that's the proposal.
So where the road is not aligned with Hawkesbury Street, what will happen with the parcel of land if the new road is going over to line up with Hawkesbury?
That footway area will be widened through there, so it'll just be a curve through the park, through the corner of the park area and line up. That's the current proposal. It's subject to some service adjustments. They're we're just talking before about the cost of adjusting services. So they're the killers for us, and so that's what we're just looking at the moment, just before we finalise those designs.
Can I ask why? Why change it?
It's an accident waiting to happen. You go out there and there's been some near misses. There's been near misses, and I understand there's probably been a few collections of vehicles, but it's something that is very, very difficult to negotiate. You can see confusion. It's only probably going to get worse as you get additional traffic and development occurring there. So it's something that needs to be fixed and can be fixed now as part of completion of the road works, as part of the Section 94 funding works.
Other questions?
Yeah. Peter Ryan. Last year we did a bus trip around with the Progress Association and we identified quite a few issues. This is for the people not present. How are we going with the delivery of that list of issues we had, the priority list we had?
So the question is, last year the Progress Association conducted a tour with council staff to identify a list of priority issues that needed some sort of action. And the question is, what's the status of that list? And Peter will answer.
So that's correct. We did a tour in a bus. A number of councillors and staff were on the tour, and a number of local residents from the Pitt Town Progress Association. So we looked at a whole range of issues, from dump rubbish to weed infestations to signage to intersections, the bypass, the condition of current roads, why some roads were built in a way that they were and other roads haven't been built in a similar way. So I think there was about 80 odd items on the list, and we've started a process to work our way through those 80 odd items. Some of the things that we have been able to address, we've worked with the county council to start a program of removing coral trees and things like that are infesting some of the lagoons and wetlands. We've also removed some of the rubbish and things like that, the easy things that we can do. Some other things where we're relying on funds from the developer, we haven't been able to arrange for the completion of those things. There were some other things like illegal activities and some fencing and things like that. There's a development application in for those matters. So there's varying degrees of progress. But again, we've met with the Progress Association representatives on a number of occasions, and it's fair to say that whilst they appreciate council working with the Progress Association, they would like to see things progress at a faster rate, and we're in the process of putting some people in positions where we can move those things at a faster rate. So there's still a lot of work to do, and we're still working with the Progress Association, but we by no means completed that list of 80 odd items. Any other questions?
Steve Brown again. In regards to the budget for Pitt Town area, you mentioned 1.8 and 1.1 roundabout. Is that only Section 94, or does that include our normal budget that we would have got if that subdivision didn't happen?
No, that's primarily Section 94. So they're the activities that are funded from the developer contributions that are coming to council as a result of the development, and they're the matters that we've either addressed this year or, as I said earlier, next year we've got funds aside to do works, but also we're starting that community consultation program for both the reserve and the community facility. And again, they're intended to be comprehensive consultation programs where we invite the whole community to a forum, not dissimilar to this, and we start talking about what our aspirations are for that facility, for that park, and we start matching budgets and construction so that, again, the community participate in that the whole way through.
Peter, setting aside that Section 94 collection, what is the cost, the total funds coming from our rates to be spent in Pitt Town?
So I should have restated the question, Joseph, and I didn't. So the last question was about works that we've proposed to undertake in the next 12 months. The current question is about what's the proportion of total rating income that's derived from Pitt Town versus the rating income that's expended in Pitt Town. And I couldn't tell you that answer, Peter, off the top of my head. It would be very difficult to do that. Some of the rates income is used locally for local services and activities. There's no doubt about that. But some of the rates income funds centralised services like the library and pools and things like that, where people from Pitt Town travel to take advantage of those services. So that rating charge is applied in a more diverse way. The other charges, like the waste charge, what's collected here is delivered here because that's for the service that's provided. So the breakdown of charges varies across the local government area, and also how they're collected and expended varies as well.
Okay. But I was under the belief that the Section 94 had to be spent on issues that were brought up for the development. There's things Pitt Town needs, like extra footpaths, because we don't have them, some safety items and a fair few of things. Are they going to come out of general rates, or do we have to wait for Section 94s to do?
So the question is about Section 94 funds and what they're used for and how they're expended. So Section 94 funds have to be used in the local area. So all the funds that are collected from the developer will be expended in the area. They won't be expended anywhere else. But in addition to that, there are other things that Section 94 won't pay for. And so that relies on Council's general revenue, which funds activities across the whole local government area. So there's, again, a situation in Council where it has to manage its general expenditure across the whole local government area. And so those matters are dealt with in a priority order. And sometimes it's based on safety, and sometimes it's based on other considerations, like the specific conditions and how long they've been in that way, things like that. So that's a decision that's made in the budget process that goes out on exhibition. And again, Jeff's going to talk about it, if you want, at a later date, about the list of programs and projects under each program for this coming year. But when we went through the special rate, we also outlined an indicative long-term program. And again, you're able to see some of those specific projects in that program. So again, we're happy to talk through that program in some detail if you want.
Is there a lot of money still owing through Section 94 with the developers? And if there is it being paid off periodically as they finish off buildings?
So Section 94 is paid as stages of the development are finished. And
are there any outstanding? Are there any of these developments outstanding?
There's quite a few lots still to be developed. So there's quite a considerable sum of money still to come in. But the money is tied to the rate of development that is undertaken by developers, not by council. So we have to, collect the money, and we have to allocate it where it's most required. Now, you can't develop land unless you've got roads and drainage. So a lot of the funds early on go towards roads and drainage, and it's only at the back end of a project that some of the additional funds for community facilities and things like that become available. So we're certainly well into the project, and some of those funds are building up, but we won't have the complete funds for some years yet.
Okay, but to answer my question fully, is that the amount of the properties that have been completed in this area, have the majority of them paid their Section 94 to you?
You can't get a release on a property until you've paid your Section 94. So if a property is released and is for sale, the Section 94 has been paid. Does that clarify that?
Not really. I'm wondering how much money is outstanding when the properties out there are being completed.
All the funds that have, all the properties that have been completed have paid their Section 94 contributions.
Has the council got that in a separate account?
Yes, we do. We keep that in a separate
Can
restricted
you give us any
fund.
idea how much money you're in from this Section 94 you're actually holding at this time?
Emma may be able to give you an indication of that in terms of how much funding we've got sitting in Section 94 at the moment. Okay, we'll check that and we'll come back to you about that.
Deanna Brown, you said about the drainage and everything that needs to be constructed, but that doesn't come out of Section 94, does it? Doesn't the developer pay for that?
No, there are two sources of funds that are collected from the developer, and one of them does cover drainage as well. And those two sources of funding from the development fund the trunk drainage, the wetlands, and the retarding and descension systems. And then Section 94 also makes a contribution for roads and the drainage that sits behind the roads, the curb and gutter and things like that, and then community facilities and parks and reserves and things like that.
At a Progress Association meeting, you spoke about the funds, the development, what we're talking about now. And I remember you saying you've got bank guarantees on that. Have you ever, how can I put it, exercised to get those bank guarantees against a developer?
So what the gentleman's referring to is that I spoke to a meeting of the Pitt Town Progress Association in May, and one of the issues that was raised related to the fact that the final seal hadn't been placed on all of the roads. Now, the general process is that roads are constructed in layers. The bottom layer is crushed rock, then there's a layer of asphalt, and then there's a final layer. Now, that final layer is normally not placed until towards the end of the total development process. So we keep bonds and guarantees and things like that to cover the cost of the outstanding works. But it's up to the developer when they want to finish those works and collect the bonds and guarantees back. We can't go in and force the developer to just do work when it may not be an appropriate time to do that. So we do have bonds and guarantees in place, and we're waiting on the developer to finish the works, put that final layer on, so that again we can finalise those matters.
Why can't you force a developer to finish the job?
It's the developer's prerogative to do the project.
Yeah, but is there a law that says you can't?
I don't believe that you can force a developer to do that final seal because you want to give them their guarantees back. It's up to them to call on their guarantees.
In other words, the developer is running a show, not the council.
Well, that's the law that applies across the whole state. So governments, successive governments, have put those laws in place. So under Section 94, that's the arrangement that the developers and council work under, and that's what they're allowed to do, and that happens across the whole state of New South Wales.
A hot potato for you. If the developer decides, I've had enough, I've made enough money, I'll jump away and doesn't withdraw anything, just goes bankrupt, how are you going to go with you claiming your money?
Well, we've got those bank guarantees and we've got those funds there to finish that project.
You have?
Yep.
Peter, just like to speak on, there's been a lot of correspondence from the developer, open letter to the people of Pitt Town, and then another one on how we could get a boat rig. I'd just like to see, what's the council's views on getting a boat rig? Knowing it's something that is in the part of the development. It should have been funded through the sale of the land. The developer is pushing very hard to get a boat ramp. Many of the residents don't want the boat ramp until we address all the safety issues, things like the community centre and playing fields, because we already have 2 boat ramps here in Pitt Town as it is. Yes, you have to pay to use them, and you could use the old one. That boat ramp would be only used probably 6 months of the year at the most. If the developer pushes that through, what's council's views on that?
The question relates to a boat ramp that is in a plan that relates to the original development, and I believe that some of it sits on Crown land, and I believe that the developer has approached the state government regarding the use of that Crown land for the boat ramp that was originally advertised. Beyond that, I would have to get some further information about the exact status and the developer's opportunity to push ahead with the boat ramp ahead of any other elements that relate to safety or things that you referred to, Peter. I'd have to take that on board.
In terms of the Pitt Town Community Centre and playing fields, what are the time frames for the community consultation and getting to a point where we start to see some things happening, and how much money has been allocated so far to that project, and how far will that get us with the money currently allocated?
So the question relates to the budget allocations next year for the Pitt Town Community Centre and the playing fields. So there's 50,000 allocated in relation to both projects in next year's budget, and that will provide for all of the consultation to develop the final concept plans for both the park and the community facility. And as I said, that will be carried out in conjunction with residents, so that we'll get to the end of the program and everyone will have a very clear idea about what's going to happen in relation to both of those projects. And the objective is to finish that by the end of next financial year, so that then we can look at subsequent budgets for getting approvals and starting construction and things like that.
Yeah.
Peter.
Sorry for bombing you, Peter. Look, I've been doing a little bit of legwork on this cost shifting. It's having a big impact on our community. I've worked it out probably over $6 million a year. That's going to increase year by year. Has the council approached state government about addressing this issue? And have we allowed for in the budget for the increases in this?
So every council, I think, across the state has complained about cost shifting from both Commonwealth and state governments. And there's a conference that starts this weekend. It's the National Local Government Conference, and there'll probably be a motion at that conference about cost shifting. And there'll be another state conference at the end of the year, and again there'll be probably a motion about cost shifting at that conference as well. Local government is a servant of the state, and so they make decisions and we have to deal with the decisions. So in the last 12 months we've had to deal with the imposition of an independent hearing and assessment panel. That's going to cost us an extra $100,000. That's not funded out of the special rate. That's something we have to find within our current rates and fees and charges, and we just have to do that. Likewise, in the last 12 months, we've had to move from our old audit process to a new state government imposed audit process. So we used to go out to competitive tender, and we would secure an external auditor that would come in and review all our accounts and then would provide us with an audit report. Now that used to cost us in the order of $55,000, $60,000, and that used to be conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers. Now there's no competitive tendering process. We have to go through the Auditor General. It's mandatory. The Auditor General has engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers to do our audit, and we're now paying in the order of $100,000 a year for that audit. And the other situation is that under the old arrangement, we had access to PricewaterhouseCoopers throughout the year to get advice on financial and other matters. Under the new arrangement, we don't have any of that additional benefit. So we're paying significantly more for a reduced scope of works by the same audit company, and that's again been imposed on us. It's a mandatory requirement from the state government. So they're just two recent examples. And, you know, it's 100,000 here and it's, you know, 30,000 there, but it all adds up. And every year we've got to find those additional funds, and we've given a commitment they will not come out of the special rate. The special rate has been planned for the next 10 years, and we've identified roads and reserves and other things that we're going to use those funds on. But there's no line item in the special rate that says allocation for cost shifting. That's not going to happen.
You did ask the young lady to do an audit on how much money's in that account, didn't you?
Yep. And have you got the sum?
It's
Yeah.
7.6 million.
So there's, the question earlier was how much money is in the Section 94 account at the moment? It's 7.6 million.
I might get some shares in Price Waterhouse Booth. In regards to, now I've lost track of what I'm going to say.
So you can be too clever by half.
Another one, Ben.
Oh, sorry, mate. You're right.
Well, I was just going to ask, in relation to this cost shifting, can you give us a detail on that? Because I think it's the time we started to talk to the Liberal Party, because from my inquiries, they did start back in then, when the elections, I think about 2011. It's cost us a lot of money. It's probably cost us our fit for the future. Are we able to get some details on that? So we can put it to our local member, because I think we've got to start now putting the pressure on them to come good. I don't know, we've got our new Labor candidate here. I don't know what the Labor Party's thoughts are on it, whether they want to buy into this. But
So look, I'll make the questions about cost shifting. So look, it's important we deal with the facts here. So cost shifting has been an issue for local government for years and years and years. It's not something that's just happened under the current government. Previous government was equally responsible for cost shifting, as was the government before that. It's an ongoing problem, and the challenge is we are the servants of the state, and so it's very easy for them to pass laws and require us to just deal with it. Now, sometimes we can deal with it by transferring that cost on. So, for example, you know, the state government imposes charges on us for the disposal of waste. We pass those costs on through our waste levy, through the collection of our domestic waste and things like that. But there are other things like the IHAP that we just can't pass on. So there are a lot of swings and roundabouts in this, and it's got quite a long history. And there are people that have been studying this for a long time, and it's a very grey area, but it is a lot of money.
How is information available to the ratepayers, I suppose, is more the issue for me, because unless you come to one of these meetings and we can see that most people are at home and not here this evening, how can people find that information out? Because I had a lot of anger directed towards council and spoke to some individuals to be educated about cost shifting, but up until that point, no idea, because I've had little interest in local government up until this point. But where can residents go and find that information so our anger can be directed to the right people and not the wrong people?
As I said, it's quite a... There's no specific definition of cost shifting.
No, but you
So-
know how much state government used to pay for that you're now having to pay for. I know you would have a table, a graph, a whole bunch of documents to say this service used to be paid for by state government and we're now picking up that $300 million or $3 million.
The dilemma for local government is it gets funding from both state and Commonwealth, and it changes on a regular basis. Now, if I wanted to keep an accurate tab on cost shifting, I'd probably have to pay one person to permanently just manage that process. And I just don't have the luxury of doing that, and nor does the council. We'd be, you know, we allocate our funds where we really need to allocate them, but we know cost shifting's an issue. I've just given you a couple of examples, but I don't know of any council that has the luxury of having someone that's just sitting there tabulating the changing, cost-shifting situation.
Auburn Council.
Blacktown.
Yes.
Auburn.
In regards to the development application that's gone in for 43 Boodles Lane, can you fill us in on the status of that?
Is that the fence?
The residents.
Yeah, the residents and the fence. That's still under consideration.
It's been bumped, so it's been sent back to the developer, so it hasn't been accepted.
All right, okay, so we've declined to accept that. So I'll need to just follow it up and see what we're doing about that, because the whole idea was that there was going to be an application lodged and we were going to assess that application. So if that's the case, we need to follow that up. So that relates to the fence and the at Boodles Lane that's been erected, and the requirement for that to be either legalised or removed. So we'll follow that
My
up.
question is mainly about the house that he's got a development application in for, I believe he has.
So it sounds like it's been returned, that development application for the house and the fence, and I'll follow it up and we'll come back to you, okay?
Seeing that we're out of favour with the state treasurer, has he allocated the funds for the bypass or not?
So the question relates to the bypass and the funding for that. So I've been meeting with the RMS on another matter, and I know that they've got funds in the budget and they've got staff working on the bypass. As to the actual status of that, I can't tell you. We'd have to get an update from RMS. But I do know they've got a resource working on that, and I do know that they're developing plans. But beyond that, I can't really answer that.
Taking a long time.
Again, I'd have to speak to RMS about that.
Can I ask, as the Pitt Town Neighbourhood Watch Coordinator, a question in terms of what assistance council can provide the Pitt Town Neighbourhood Watch program to completing our project of having signs erected around Pitt Town and the bin stickers and other bits and pieces?
Okay, so the question relates to what assistance can council provide for Pitt Town Neighbourhood Watch in terms of erecting signs and things like that. So one of the questions related to placing Neighbourhood Watch stickers on our bins and our domestic waste bins, and we've advised the Neighbourhood Watch that we're comfortable with the stickers being placed on the bins, providing they're placed in a way that doesn't interfere with our domestic waste collection, and also that they're placed on the bin by the owner of the property, so that the owner is aware that they're being placed on there and is happy for them to be placed on there. So we've given that commitment. In terms of the signage, we've got a list of potential sign locations, and again, we've advised that subject to the police approving the location of the signs, we're happy for those signs to be erected in accordance with any requirements of the traffic committee and things like that as well. So they'll probably have to go to the traffic committee, and that will probably happen in the near future. And I've also said that in relation to assistance with installation of the signs, I've taken that on board, and I'm going to see whatever assistance council can provide in relation to that as well.
With all this rate increase and all that, when realistically are we going to see the wheels put the WD-40 on the rusty old wheel? When is it going to happen? That's what we really want to know. We're paying. What's going to happen? Let us know.
So the special rate budget was approved by IPART on the 7th of May? 17th of May. It was approved by council last night, and we've already started the process of recruiting staff, project managers and other staff to start doing the work, and we've also identified work that will start on the 1st of July. That's across the whole of the local government area. We've now got to work and develop those detailed plans, and part of that is I want to understand how we can mesh some of that Section 94 work and things like that. So I need to come back at our next meeting and give you a bit of a program for those things. But the Section 94 is going to be, in the short term, the biggest hit for Pitt Town is going to be through Section 94.
Developer Johnson sent out a letter drop to all the things, his money he spent on a lot of figures. How accurate would that be?
The
You've seen
The
it.
question relates to a letter that's been sent out by Mr Johnson, the developer, in relation to funds that he's expended in Pitt Town. Okay, I haven't seen the letter. I wasn't actually aware of the letter, but we'll make some inquiries, obviously, now that I know about the letter, and I'll try and understand what's in that letter.
If somebody who's a real estate agent and he got all this money to do all this, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I haven't seen the letter, so I can't comment. I'm sorry.
Can I finish with a question outside of Pitt Town? I understand there's an application that's been made for Vineyard Oval to be developed, so it could be occupied and played out of by a new junior rugby league team, the North West Magpies. I'm just wondering if council received an application or where that may be up to, if they have Vineyard Oval.
So the sporting facilities in the Hawkesbury local government area are generally managed by a community organisation that works in partnership with council, the Sports Council. They would have dealt with any application such as that. Again, I'm happy to take that on notice and make some inquiries and come back to you. I'm not familiar with a ground allocation of that nature, but that's not to say it hasn't happened. Any other questions?
Is this the end? I just like to introduce the
This is the end, Peter.
He wants to have the last word.
Yeah, I like the last one. Look, Pitt Town stood up when we looked like an amalgamation and we fought to keep our town, our district, what it is. Give it its own ownership, its own personality. I'd just like to thank the staff and yourself and all the councillors who stood up, and you have done it hard. There hasn't been real nice comments a lot of the times. I've gone to a lot of the council meetings and I think we're on a good direction. And thanks very much for your efforts. It's very much appreciated.
That's a pleasure, Peter. We always enjoy coming to Pitt Town, I can assure you. Thanks very much, everybody.